30 Forgotten Meal from hard times that helped your grandparents survive. These humble meals were born from hard times, the Great Depression, wartime rationing, economic hardship, but carried families through with warmth and creativity. Let's look back at the simple dishes that helped families get through difficult periods. Sugar sandwiches. Nothing speaks more clearly of childhood hunger than this simple sugar sandwich. This dish has been mentioned in many historical oral traditions about hard times. It consists of just 2 slices of white bread, spread with a thin layer of margarine or butter, then sprinkled with a generous amount of sugar. Sometimes, if the budget allowed for a small luxury, a little cinnamon could also be added for extra flavor. This snack cost only a few cents, but had the ability to fill the empty stomachs of young children. Children thought they were eating a dessert, not understanding the desperation behind the dish, that their parents had nothing else to feed them. Sugar provided quick energy, helping children to have more strength for their daily activities. Creamed chipped beef on toast. This dish has a less than flattering name in the military, SOS. But for mothers and families, it was a real lifesaver. Paper-thin slices of dried beef, cooked in a rich, creamy white sauce, then gently poured over hot slices of toast. The special thing about chipped beef is its ability to be preserved for a very long time without refrigeration, an extremely important advantage during times of intermittent or uncommon electricity. This helped the dish stretch the meager amount of beef to feed many mouths during the Great Depression and the 2 intense world wars. Many housewives also had a very clever trick: washing the beef first to remove excess salt, a necessary step to avoid high blood pressure issues and also to mellow out the strong, salty flavor, making the dish more palatable for the whole family. For young children, the chewy beef mixed in creamy sauce on crispy toast was an unforgettable taste of childhood, a familiar meal during hard times. Pea soup with dumplings. On cold winter days, when the wind whistled through cracks in the doors and the pantry was bare, pea soup with dumplings was a warming, filling dish that many families relied on. Dried peas were simmered for hours until tender, emitting a rustic, rich aroma. Onions were often added to enhance natural sweetness and depth of flavor, and if very lucky, a small ham hock would be added to the pot, imparting a smoky and slightly fatty essence to every spoonful of soup. The highlight that made this soup so filling was the simple dumplings, made only from flour, salt, and water. They were dropped into the hot soup, slowly swelling, soaking up the flavors of the peas and ham bone, transforming an ordinary pot of peas into a truly satisfying meal when meat was unavailable. This soup was especially popular among Scandinavian immigrant families in the American Midwest, where it became a traditional Thursday dinner, a culinary ritual that helped meals stretch further, kept bodies warm, and warmed souls during long, cold winters. Onion sandwich. Nothing better illustrates the hardship of an era than this onion sandwich. Just 2 slices of bread, sandwiching a thick slice of onion, sprinkled with a little salt, pepper, and if lucky, a thin layer of lard or butter. The pungent taste of onion provided a strong and bold flavor when there was nothing else to eat, surprisingly awakening the palate. But beyond the flavor, onions also provided essential vitamins when fresh vegetables were scarce, serving as an important source of nutrition during times of scarcity. For coal miners in Appalachia, the onion sandwich had another practical purpose. Its strong smell helped deter others from stealing their lunch. People even believed that onions helped combat coal dust in the lungs, although modern science may not fully confirm this, but that belief provided some comfort and hope. Sometimes children would sprinkle a little sugar on top of the onion slice to reduce its pungency, creating a poor man's caramelized version, a small sweetness in meals full of hardship. Water pie. A pie made from water? It sounds illogical, but it was a miracle. Water pie is perhaps the recipe that best demonstrates extraordinary ingenuity in adversity. Without eggs or milk, this dessert starts with an empty pie crust, then you pour in a simple mixture of water, sugar, flour, butter, and vanilla. The magic happens when it's baked. These ingredients transform incredibly into a smooth, custard-like filling, satisfying the whole family's sweet cravings. This pie allowed families to stretch precious sugar, which they had to save for weeks to buy, into a luxurious dessert, turning a simple meal into a celebration. This recipe was often passed down on old, yellowed index cards, with handwritten notes in the margins about substitutions for hard-to-find ingredients. Children back then must have watched their mothers pour water into the pie crust with wide eyes, wondering how water could turn into such a sweet dessert. Its other names, depression pie or desperation pie, also tell part of the story of its origin. Hoover stew. This one-pot stew was bitterly named after President Herbert Hoover during the Great Depression, when life became incredibly difficult. It was a symbol of improvisation, a dish combining anything available in the kitchen or anything that could be donated. Usually pasta for bulk, chopped hot dogs for flavor and a bit of protein, along with canned corn and canned tomatoes for vegetables and vitamins. In the dilapidated shanty towns called Hoovervilles, even a small hot dog could flavor a huge pot of soup, enough to feed 12 hungry people. This stew had no fixed recipe. Its ingredients were completely flexible depending on what was on hand or what was donated. Sometimes it was government cheese instead of hot dogs, or cabbage instead of corn to make the most of every meager bit of food. Do any smells or feelings remind you of those special meals? Please tell me your favorite childhood dish. Bread pudding. During hard times, not a single crumb of food went to waste. Stale bread, seemingly worthless, found new life in this warm, fragrant bread pudding. Cubed bread was soaked in a sweet mixture of milk, or sometimes just water if milk was too scarce. Eggs, sugar, and a touch of cinnamon. Once fully flavored, this mixture was baked until golden brown, with a glistening, aromatic surface filling the kitchen. If lucky enough to have some raisins, they added small bursts of sweetness, enhancing the richness of this simple dessert. The difficult historical era forced families to utilize every piece of bread, wasting nothing, transforming the old into new, the simple into luxurious. Interestingly, bread pudding has today become a gourmet dessert in luxurious restaurants in New Orleans, an unexpected elevation from its humble origins. Ham hocks and beans. This was a staple of Southern American cuisine where frugality and resourcefulness were key to survival. Ham hocks, often the bony parts with connective tissue and a little meat left from the pig's leg, may not sound appealing, but they brought a rich and distinctive flavor to a pot of beans that could feed a family for days. Dried beans were soaked overnight to shorten cooking time and help them soften, then slowly simmered with the ham hocks for hours. Through the slow cooking process, the meat would fall tenderly off the bone, and each bean would absorb the smoky pork flavor, creating a dish that was both nutritious and delicious. This dish was often served with homemade cornbread, which could be used to soak up every drop of rich broth, wasting no flavor. This was how families used every part of the animal. They learned to economize admirably to create a meal full of protein and energy to sustain working families. Many families even had special bean pots, often old and chipped but cherished like treasures because they had absorbed flavors over many years of use. Potato soup. The humble potato, cheap, easy to grow, and incredibly filling, became the savior of countless families during the hungriest times. Potato soup magically transformed this tuber into various dishes. Just a few simple potatoes could become a hearty dinner with only water, salt, and, if available, a little onion and a spoonful of milk. This soup not only nourished the body but also carried deep memories, especially for Irish immigrant communities who carried memories of old famines in their homeland, where potatoes truly meant the survival of an entire people. This soup could be flexibly adjusted, adding bacon fat for flavor and calories, wild onions foraged from nature, or a little flour to thicken the soup. Whatever the version, potato soup always served as an idea to complete a filling meal and provide hope in trying times. Mock apple pie. This pie contains absolutely no apples. Instead, Ritz crackers or other plain crackers, which were readily available and relatively cheap, were simmered in a special sugar syrup combined with cream of tartar and lemon extract. This mixture, when cooked, created a pie filling with a texture and tartness similar to real apple filling. This pie provided the comfort of a familiar apple pie when real fruit was unobtainable, especially popular during the Dust Bowl years when orchards died and fresh fruit supplies were depleted. Interestingly, this recipe was so famous that it even appeared on Ritz cracker boxes in the 1930s, a testament to its popularity and importance in that historical context. In their kitchens, women truly resourceful in transforming every ingredient to prepare the most delicious dishes. Which dish on this list surprised you the most with our grandparents' creativity? Share with us in the comments. Rabbit stew. With mounting difficulties, crop failures, and empty pantries, the men in the family would take their hunting guns to the fields or forests to hunt wild rabbits. They sought free and incredibly valuable protein for rural families when there was nothing else to eat. Lean rabbit meat required slow and thorough cooking to become tender and palatable. This stew combined hunted rabbit meat with vegetables like carrots, potatoes, and onions, anything that could be grown in the garden or found from neighbors. Rabbit stew provided protein and stretched meals, creating a larger quantity of food than simply roasting a whole rabbit. Interestingly, during World War I and later World War II, the government even encouraged people to raise rabbits in their victory gardens to supplement protein sources due to limited meat rations. Perhaps children back then were even taught not to name these rabbits because they were not pets but a source of life for the entire family. Corn cob jelly. It sounds strange, but corn cob jelly continues to be a wonderful testament to the ingenuity and no-waste philosophy of old farm families. After the kernels were removed for cooking, the seemingly useless corn cobs still retained a significant amount of sweetness and latent flavor. Smart households would not throw them away. Instead, they would boil the cobs to extract the last bit of sweetness, creating a valuable liquid. When this liquid was combined with sugar and pectin, it would transform into a delicate honey-colored jelly, with a flavor that was both faintly corny and flowery like honey. This jelly was often spread on biscuits or homemade cornbread, providing a touch of sweetness and luxury when sugar became a rationed commodity. This technique had been developed by farm families long ago, many generations before industrialized food systems existed. Milk toast. Its humble appearance belies its importance in American culinary history. As simple as its name, milk toast was a basic meal that provided incredible comfort and nutrition that few other foods could. It combined three very common ingredients: bread, milk, and butter. The bread was lightly toasted, then soaked in warm milk, sometimes sweetened with a little sugar or molasses, or made savory with salt and pepper depending on preference and what was available. For the youngest and oldest members of the family, especially when sick and lacking appetite, this soft, easy-to-digest meal became incredibly important. It provided essential calcium and protein, helping to maintain health during times of weakness. This dish was often considered a last resort before actual starvation, and appeared in many medical texts as an ideal food for the infirm, as well as in stories of famine. Garbage soup. In those kitchens, nothing truly edible was thrown into the trash. Instead, vegetable peels, leftover meat bones, wilting greens, and old vegetables were gathered, then simmered together with water, salt, and pepper in a large pot. What was special was that this soup pot was often kept on the stove continuously, with new ingredients added daily, creating a kind of perpetual soup that never ran out. Potato boiling water, pasta cooking water, even water from canned vegetables were added to enrich the soup. It may sound unusual, but this dish provided necessary vitamins and flavor when fresh food was unavailable. Only those who grew up during this difficult period understood the resilience that overcame all scarcity, turning seemingly worthless things into a source of life. A Depression-era cookbook called it perpetual soup to pass down to future generations. Vinegar pie. Do you remember when fruit became too expensive to buy? People utilized vinegar as an unexpected but highly effective ingredient to provide the tart flavor that lemons or apples would normally provide. This dessert was called desperation pie or mock lemon pie. By combining vinegar with sugar, eggs, butter, and a hint of spices like cinnamon and nutmeg, people created a sweet and tangy filling inside a simple pie crust. The chemical reaction between vinegar and baking soda helped create a light texture similar to more expensive fruit pies. Spices were added to mask the harshness of the vinegar, transforming it into a tartness similar to lemon, deceiving the palates of both adults and children. Sometimes mothers labeled it mock lemon pie to avoid complaints from children. Does your family have any food-saving secrets passed down through generations? Tell us about them. Egg drop soup. During the cold winter months, hens laid fewer eggs than usual. Therefore, each egg became incredibly precious, a rare source of protein that needed to be maximized. Egg drop soup was an ingenious solution to stretch a single egg into a meal for 4 people. Simply pouring beaten eggs slowly into hot broth, which could be made from chicken feet and bones, onions, or simply a chicken bouillon cube, would cause the egg to form delicate, shimmering strands, giving a feeling of abundance and luxury. If a little chopped green onion was added, the soup would be even more appealing. This technique was brought to America by Chinese immigrants and became a protein-rich dish with minimal ingredients, helping to warm stomachs and hearts during times of scarcity. Witnessing the golden egg strands appear in the soup bowl made children feel like they were eating a special meal, enjoying a little joy in a difficult life. Biscuits and gravy. This was a foundational breakfast in Southern kitchens. a filling dish that helped millions of farmers and workers maintain energy through long, arduous work shifts. To sustain the energy of millions of workers, this dish appeared in almost every southern kitchen. With skillful hands, mothers transformed flour, lard, or bacon grease, and milk into fragrant, soft, fluffy biscuits, accompanied by a thick, creamy gravy, often containing very little meat. Perhaps the last crumbled bits of bacon or a few leftover sausage pieces. To give the impression of more meat and enhance flavor, black pepper, a cheap and abundant spice, was used generously, creating a distinctive, pungent taste. This dish provided cheap calories and energy in the simplest way. It was a complete meal, warming the stomach and heart, helping people have enough strength to face heavy manual labor. In difficult times, people demonstrated their ability to transform basic ingredients into a satisfying meal. Fried bologna. In times when steak was a distant dream, families turned to bologna, a processed luncheon meat pressed into round slices, cheap and easily available. Frying these simple slices of bologna transformed them into a sizzling, fragrant dish that filled the kitchen with aroma, making it feel like a hearty meal was being cooked. When fried, the edges of the bologna would curl up and become crispy, creating bologna bubbles that children particularly loved. This dish was often eaten on white bread, spread with a thin layer of yellow mustard, sometimes with a slice of government cheese if available. From the Great Depression to the 1970s, this was a familiar dinner when wages were tight. A hot fried bologna sandwich could feel like restaurant food, a small luxury in times of scarcity. Tomato gravy. On days when the pantry was almost empty, people utilized the tomatoes grown in their home gardens. Tomato gravy became an ingenious solution to transform the most basic ingredients into a flavorful meal. For the base, rendered bacon grease or saved butter was used, flour to thicken, and fresh or canned tomatoes from the garden provided both liquid and a gentle tartness. This gravy was often poured over homemade biscuits, rice, or white bread, providing vitamin C and a fresh flavor to bland starches. For many families, this meatless meal appeared frequently when finances were tight, utilizing homegrown produce to compensate for store-bought proteins they couldn't afford. Homemade canned tomatoes from the previous summer became kitchen gold during the winter months, each precious jar carefully rationed to last until the next harvest. The vibrant color of the gravy also brightened up monotonous meals, providing psychological comfort along with nutrition. Bread soup. If bread was too stale for sandwiches but too precious to throw away, it found new purpose in this warm and comforting bread soup. Old hard bread chunks were simmered in broth, often from a beef bouillon cube when no meat bones were available or simply hot water, until they softened and thickened the liquid, transforming into a full-bodied and delicious soup. If possible, a beaten egg was sometimes added before serving to boost protein, and onions or carrots were used for extra flavor. This soup was a method of stretching minimal ingredients, a testament to people's ingenuity in turning seemingly inedible items into a warm and comforting meal. Different cultures have their versions of this dish. Italian immigrants called it ribollita, while Pennsylvania Dutch communities called it brown soup. Pinto bean sandwiches. When cold cuts became an unaffordable luxury, cold pinto beans became an excellent substitute for sandwich filling. Often leftover beans from the previous night's dinner, these beans, though simple, provided a significant amount of protein and helped fill the hungry stomachs of workers and children. The beans were usually lightly mashed with a fork for easier eating, then mixed with a little chopped onion for flavor, and sometimes a splash of vinegar for a slight tang or mustard to enrich the taste. These sandwiches often appeared in children's lunchboxes in coal mining communities and textile towns, where heavy labor demanded continuous energy. Parents did everything they could to ensure their children did not go hungry, even in the most difficult circumstances. Cabbage and noodles, haluski. Cabbage, a vegetable that could be stored well for months during winter, became extremely valuable when fresh vegetables were unavailable or too expensive. This dish consists of shredded cabbage stir-fried until tender, then mixed with cooked egg noodles and seasoned with salt, pepper, and possibly caraway seeds for added flavor. This dish, sometimes called haluski in Eastern European households, filled hungry stomachs at minimal cost, providing comfort and warmth during hard times. The faint smell of cooked cabbage in the air became a sensory hallmark of working-class apartments and neighborhoods, something some people felt ashamed of, but others proudly embraced. Homemade noodles often replaced store-bought ones when flour was available but money was not, and afternoons spent rolling and cutting dough became efficient family time. This humble dish connected generations of immigrants to their homelands, while adapting to American ingredients and circumstances, serving as a cultural bridge during difficult transitions. Mustard sandwiches. Children still needed packed lunches for school, and meat was hard to come by, so mustard sandwiches were born. Imagine, just a thin layer of yellow mustard spread between two slices of bread, nothing more. This dish, though incredibly simple, provided the appearance of a normal sandwich, helping children not feel too different from their friends. The pungent taste of mustard played an important role in making the absence of meat less noticeable, deceiving the palate and creating a strong impression. It was a heartbreaking symbol of hardship, showing how harsh life had become when parents could not provide a better meal for their children. It was dishes like these that led to schools beginning to implement lunch programs, recognizing the need to ensure no child went to school hungry. Codfish gravy. Dried salted cod was a preserved fish that needed to be soaked before cooking to remove excess salt, but it was an extremely important source of protein when fresh meat was unavailable or too expensive. When prepared into a creamy white sauce and poured over potatoes or homemade biscuits, it became a complete and filling meal. To add richness, chopped hard-boiled eggs were sometimes added to the gravy. For fishing communities along the coast, salted cod was an important food reserve during harsh winter months. Furthermore, salted cod could be transported well deep inland and preserved indefinitely, making it a type of hunger insurance even for landlocked areas. Although it had a strong flavor faced with hunger, people still accepted and even loved these seemingly hard-to-swallow dishes. Potato peel soup. This soup is the ultimate proof of the no-waste, no-scarcity philosophy that shaped the lives of millions of families. Instead of being discarded, thick potato peels, thoroughly scrubbed clean before peeling, were fully utilized. They were simmered with onions and salt until the starch from the peels released into the water, creating a thin yet rich soup. This soup not only provided vitamins and minerals that would otherwise be thrown away, but was also an effective way to extract nutrition from every scrap of food. During World War II, the government even issued posters encouraging this soup as part of national conservation efforts. Many countries around the world also have similar versions of potato peel soup with various preparation methods. Foraged mushroom stew. Foraging for mushrooms was how families found food centuries ago. No need for expensive grocery stores, nature became a priceless source of food. Our grandparents and great-grandparents, who possessed valuable knowledge of safe wild mushrooms, gathered them from forests and fields, creating free but flavorful meals. Mushrooms were simmered with any vegetables available in the garden or found from neighbors such as onions, potatoes, or carrots. The rich, earthy broth of mushrooms blended with vegetables, creating a stew that was both filling and wonderfully flavorful. Knowledge of identifying safe wild mushrooms was an extremely valuable intellectual asset, passed down through generations, sometimes meticulously recorded in handwritten notebooks with detailed drawings. Spaghetti with butter. If you couldn't afford meat for elaborate tomato sauce, pasta was a great option to fill hungry stomachs. Cooked spaghetti was tossed with a small amount of butter or margarine, perhaps sprinkled with a little salt, or even better, a bit of grated cheese if lucky. This simple meal could feed a family at very little cost, while providing necessary carbohydrates for energy, helping everyone have enough strength to work and study. Many mothers often had the habit of saving butter from breakfast, scraping leftover bits into a special container, reserved specifically for pasta night. Even the pasta water was sometimes saved for soup the next day, utilizing every bit of starch and flavor from the ingredients. In some families, this simple dish was even elevated to a guest meal by serving it on beautiful plates and sprinkling a little parsley from a windowsill pot. Egg gravy. Egg gravy was an ingenious way to stretch one or two single eggs to feed several mouths, maximizing the use of minimal ingredients. The process began by heating fat in a pan. It could be saved bacon grease or lard. Flour was stirred in to form a roux. Then water or milk was slowly added to create a thick, creamy sauce. Finally, beaten eggs were stirred into the hot sauce, but not boiling to avoid curdling, forming delicate, soft egg strands running throughout the gravy, bringing egg flavor to every spoonful. The technique of adding eggs to gravy required skill to prevent the eggs from curdling into crumbly pieces instead of delicate strands. Many families even raised chickens specifically for this purpose, and the morning egg harvest would determine whether egg gravy appeared on the dinner table that day. Therefore, to make the meal more complete, Children were tasked with caring for the chickens to become their reserve food source. Dandelion salad. In times of scarcity, food sometimes grew wild right in the backyard, and dandelions are a prime example. Young dandelion leaves, harvested before the flowers appeared, provided important nutrients when fresh vegetables were unavailable or too expensive. These slightly bitter green leaves were thoroughly washed, then tossed with a simple mixture of vinegar, sugar, and bacon grease if available. Some families also added hard-boiled eggs from their own chickens for extra nutrition. This almost free meal provided essential vitamins in the spring, when winter stores were depleted and garden vegetables were not yet ready for harvest. Children were often sent out with brown paper bags to gather the tenderest young leaves, learning to identify plants and choose the best leaves. The ritual of washing greens became a family chore, requiring multiple rinses to remove all traces of dirt and grime. Those who grew up eating foraged greens often developed a lifelong preference for bitter flavors, even preferring dandelion salad to store-bought lettuce even when they could afford it later. Ketchup sandwiches. When there was nothing else for lunch, bread and ketchup became the most urgent solution. Just 2 slices of bread spread with ketchup, sometimes with a little sugar if available. The characteristic sweet and sour taste of ketchup made the plain sandwich more appealing to young eaters, children who didn't understand the financial difficulties behind such a basic dish. Children often didn't realize that their parents often went hungry so their children could have this simple meal. Even restaurants sometimes offered free ketchup packets, which parents would collect and save for emergency meals at home. This sandwich became so popular that many children even asked for it even when other options were available. Silent film stars Buster Keaton and Natalie Talmadge posing at their Los Angeles wedding. Her layered gown reflected the perfectly fashionable bridal style of the era. Thank you for watching. Do you want to continue these trips down memory lane? If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the Back to Yesterday channel so you don't miss the next nostalgic stories. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next videos where we will continue to explore things that are lost but never forgotten.